Welcome back, World of Blazers. Today I have Kervin Aucoin. It's been a while, and I love that you're here because I don't know if you know this, but this is my 100th episode. And what's cool about that
I did not.
No, and what's cool is you're one of my earliest guests, and we've always stayed in touch, whether we're recording or not, just through messaging and whatnot. So this is really, like how this aligned was really cool to have you here. And especially what's going on in the world, as we discussed earlier. And I think there's a lot going on, but let's start here. Let's start with, as we just discussed, Venezuela. It's the hot thing right now. As I told you earlier, I haven't really been tracking it. I know I should be, but I don't know a ton of what is going on and why we have this this kind of fight between the U.S. and Venezuela for whatever reason. And from what I can see, it's been mostly over killing drug dealers, shooting missiles at boats that escalated into, trying to possibly overthrow the Venezuelan leadership or government. I don't even know if that's a thing. I just know that there's a huge warship over there. Trump just mobilized about 16,000 troops, somewhere around that number. I want to get from your perspective, what is going on? What's happening here? Why?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I just want to say thank you. 100th episode. That's huge, man.
Finally.
It's good to be here for that. And as you said, yeah, we're always in contact. I really do reach out to you sometimes for the political aspect of it. Because as you know, I'm politically homeless.
I know.
I try to stay out of that conversation, but it is important. It's important in geopolitics, which is the world that I find myself in. It's important in the intelligence realm, where I've spent the majority of my life now. So where are we in Venezuela?
Yeah.
Actually, I would say in the Southern Command, right? So Southcom, that is the AOR, the area of responsibility. That the USS Gerald R, which is what you alluded to, that is the ship that has moved out. And so from a just to let everyone who does not maybe have a military background, or even if you have a military background, you may not have a background within staff work and the combatant commands and things like that. So how does this work? So the USS Gerald R was within the U.S. Europe Command, or EUCOM. So they were out in the Mediterranean Sea. They were in Europe, and they were really doing counter intel against like Russia and also China, that is in that area as well. So the Trump administration then moved them from their port call into U.S. Southcom, or the U.S. Southern Command. So U.S. Southcom encompasses the Caribbean, South America, that whole area there. So now the Southcom commander now controls the USS Gerald R, that naval vessel that is now in Southcom. Now what we found is that Department or Secretary of War has declared Operation Southern Spear. When we're talking about operations, named operations, we're talking about funding. I know a lot of times we see that in the news as like, oh, we're starting an operation. This is a war. This is about funding. So those names are very strategic in how they're placed. So Operation Southern Spear, you can Google it, you can look it up.
Can you explain that a little bit about funding, like how that relates to funding, real quick before we move on?
Yeah. So depending on the operation that you declare, that's going to start a joint task force. That joint task force, whoever that may be in this respect, it is Southern Spear. I'm not too clear on who owns Southern Spear, but that joint task force, Southern Spear, is going to take CONOP or operational control, or OPCON, of the area. So the funding that goes in goes directly to that command staff. So the funding funnels in for everything that they are going to do. You can shift funding. That gives you the ability to shift funding from other military operations that may be floundering or not happening right now into your operation, giving you the ability to then request ISR assets, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, drones, really, assets into your area of responsibility. It gives you added intelligence. It then puts your staff on like a 24/7 recall so that they have to come in if anything were to happen.
So it doesn't actually mean physical military involvement at this stage.
Absolutely
Necessarily.
not. So just
Okay.
because you have a named operation doesn't mean that you are doing active military operations in a specific area of responsibility.
All right.
That
That's an important
means,
distinction. Yeah.
yeah, and you're right. And I'm glad you made that distinction there, or help guide me along to that.
Oh no,
Sometimes
I
that can
felt
be a
like I
high
cut you off.
energy curve, and
Yeah, I wasn't trying to. I just felt that when you said funding, I was like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Because most of us haven't heard that. We just hear, like you said, operation this, operation that. But what you just said is great because it defines it. It's like, wait, that doesn't necessarily mean we're doing anything. We're just kind of putting the department together, so to speak, right? Getting the personnel. So that's important to know because we never really hear that in the media. It's just operation and look at what's happening and now we're doing this, but that's why that was important for you to explain that.
and
And
we have to understand the militaries of
yeah,
bureaucracy.
okay,
Like we can't do anything without the funding. So throughout all of these conversations, like we watch movies. Movies are not reality. I hate to break it to
no,
everybody. It doesn't happen in a moment where we just drop SEALs into a country and they just go and do whatever they want. You have to have authorities. You have to understand who has the operational control of these entities. Um, as someone who's worked in the Joint Special Operations Command, I think some people outside of that kind of view them as this, shady, dark group that just goes off and does whatever they want. But when an operation starts up, if you're going to use special operations forces, they become attached to a conventional um, task force. So a commander has control of those assets. They cannot just jump in and do whatever the hell they want to do, right? And that's what's going on here. So what we're seeing right now, right, is the strikes that are happening on these quote narco-terrorists, end quote. That's what that's what Secretary of War Hegseth is calling them. That's what Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, is calling them. That's what President Trump is calling them, narco-terrorists. Are they narco-terrorists? Are they not? That is still debatable. I don't know. I don't have the information, and even if I
right.
did have that, so that's not the AOR that I work in right now. And even if I did have that information, I'm not coming on here to give that
No.
information up.
I
So
understand that. Here's what I have to say on that. So the narco organizations were designated as terrorists. So technically, yes, they can be labeled as narco terrorists. But from what I know in talking to past like law enforcement, DEA, and FBI people or agents, these things don't just happen. And a lot of people don't understand, like the National Guard, for example, and even the military is involved in these investigations and operations. It gets to a point where they've done the background and the homework and they know who's who. And this stuff goes on all the time. The people just don't know about it. The problem is we're seeing it play out in real time since these narco organizations have been designated terrorists. And now that they're terrorists, or terrorists, I mean, then the military can now get involved and, if ordered to do so, yeah, they can take them out. That's what's happening. So I don't think that these strikes are without merit, as in they didn't do any research. They don't know who they're going after. They know the roots. The DEA has been all over this for a long time. And so that's just from what I know from talking to people and what they say about
and
these
I can
operations.
speak to that a little bit there because this was my life for about 12
Right.
years of what we would call targeting, which is the entire targeting process from identifying a target. So we would call it. It's changed since I've gotten out, but by the end of my career there, it was called F3EA, which is find, fix, finish. And then you had exploitation and analysis. So find, fix, finish is find the target, fix the target, meaning whatever intel you have, that you know that this person's here. We use a lot of SIGINT targeting. SIGINT is known. I was a SIGINT guy, so I can say I was an imagery guy, IMINT, and I was a HUMINT guy, human intelligence. I was a SIGINT guy as well, signals intelligence, meaning capturing signals and identifying. So I think I can say this with good experience that when
Confidence,
you get
right?
pretty high confidence that that SIGINT is the most trusted form of intelligence, as long as you have that confidence in it. But it's the most trusted form. When you have that SIGINT hit on someone, that means you fix them. And then the finish is what we're seeing with the narco-terrorists with the boats there. Finish meaning we're going to put a round down range. We're going to put a hellfire on a head, and kill this person for whatever reason, right? And then the exploitation and analysis really is in like I don't know what they're doing with the narco-terrorists, but in the counterterrorism within Africa, within the Middle East, the exploitation and analysis were very key, right? Because you can put a round down range, and finish a terrorist, but the bigger picture there is understanding who that was, because it typically wasn't your number one target. It was a high value target, but it wasn't your number one target. And so how do we get to that number one target? Well, we exploit the information we got from that finish, and then we analyze it, and then we complete the process to go to find again to find those. So I will tell you, Southcom, the analysts at Southcom, I assure you, are doing those same exact things, which you mentioned with the DEA. They are doing the exact same thing. I have a good relationship with a lot of former and current DEA members, and they're not just out there ready to kill people just for whims.
No, they're doing the work.
They are doing the work, but we can't get that information, and we should not have that information out in public.
Oh no.
But I do understand due process, and we should have due process. And sometimes people make mistakes. Also, sometimes people are informed they made a mistake, and I'm talking, not trying to get too. I can't speak too much to it, but sometimes people are told they made a mistake when they actually didn't make a mistake, because we were talking in the information warfare and propaganda.
Right.
And so we have to understand that there is that as well. There is propaganda to make people either look bad or to try to incite riots in certain areas that, you say, well, we killed these 12 individuals, but they were just fishermen, right?
Yeah.
And we don't know that as fact, but that is broadcast as fact in order to incite certain riots and incite a feeling into certain people.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Now, everything you just said, how does that tie into what's going on with Venezuela's response, in your opinion? Because the Venezuelan leader is very pissed off, fiery. And I don't know if it's public pressure that he's reacting this way, or if he really believes that the U.S. is a threat and wants to really pick a fight with the U.S. But from his perspective, if we're just, macro looking at it, it does seem like the U.S. is the aggressor. And don't want to put you on the spot, but are we being the aggressor? Is Venezuela overreacting, or is there something else going on here that we just don't know about?
Well, I don't know if you know one of my favorite lines, which is two things can be true at the same time.
Very familiar. And it's true. It's a true statement. Yeah.
It's very true. And in this one, it is very true. Is America being the aggressor? I believe so. I do believe that. And I hope I can say that. Is the Trump administration being the aggressor? I believe they are. I think that part of that deals with Trump's family, who I believe he had a brother who dealt with drugs and alcoholism.
Okay.
And as someone who has had family members that have passed from, and not drugs and alcohol, although I've had that as well, and so I don't really touch drugs. But I've had family members die of health related issues. I'm a huge proponent of health related issues, so I understand that. I understand where he's coming from. Is Venezuela harboring cartels? They're not really the ones harboring cartels. They are the ones allowing for the facilitation of the movement of the
Right.
drugs.
They're part of the trade route.
Are we being
right?
Yes. Are we being aggressive? And we being the United States? Yes. Do we have a reason to be aggressive in that if we want to stop this drug trafficking? Yes, I also believe that. But also, is Maduro afraid that he is about to die or his regime is about to get taken away? Like the way that I see it, and this goes for like Putin, for any leader, I would say this about Zelensky, about Trump, about any person who is or the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, anyone who retains power, they would rather die than give up power.
Of course.
And I think that's where Maduro is now. He understands that he may be losing power and he would rather die. He would rather start a war with the United States and die, be made a martyr in Venezuela than give up his power. And so I think that's where we stand right now.
Yeah, and you know, I can agree with that. I see that Maduro, he hasn't had much favor with his people. And I think that maybe this is a way for him to try to gain that support by saying, "Hey, I'm standing up for you. I'm standing up to the big bad USA who's targeting us directly without cause, without justification." I'm not sure if a lot of it is justified. I mean, let's just go back to the narco-terrorist thing in the boats. There isn't any reason that with our training and our military out there that we couldn't just capture these people that are in the boats instead of just blowing them up. That's what I think. You know, I could be wrong on that, but you know, we could have approached it differently. That could have maybe I don't know. Maybe we could have had a different relationship right now with Venezuela in terms of what we're doing, and you know, that opening that communication as to what we're trying to do. I can't see why in this situation that the government, if we're truly going after narco-terrorists, for example, we're truly trying to stop it, why the government of Venezuela would stand up for narco-terrorists. That's what I can't put together. So, and that's why I'm asking, like, what else is behind this? Like, that doesn't make sense that a country would stand up for trafficking drugs versus trying to stop the trafficking of drugs, unless that government is completely controlled by the narcos, possibly.
Well, you just said it there, George. They are controlled by the cartels. Many of the countries in Latin America are controlled by the cartels. Now, like I said, that's not my area of responsibility. Typically, I defer to other analysts. You know, like a guy, Rickonomics. He is Colombian. He was a U.S. soldier who fought in Afghanistan as an intelligence analyst, but he's Colombian. He understands Latin America,
Right.
so that's where I get my information from. And so I would defer to him on some of this, but absolutely, I think they are controlled by the cartels. And look, the cartels do work as a terrorist organization. They have not been in the past designated a foreign terrorist organization.
Right.
Now they are by the United States, but they really are, because what is a terrorist organization other than an organization that uses fear and fear tactics and terror to control a government or a people? And that's what they're doing in Venezuela right now. I think
Yeah.
what was interesting to me, and I think this is something, this brings up why it's personal for Trump against Maduro, and I haven't really gone behind the scenes and kind of tried to figure out what Trump's real issue with Maduro is. I get he's left wing communist kind of leadership, but from the accounts that I read, Venezuela gave all of their oil proceeds. They were going to give the majority of their income flow to the United States to stop sanctions, to stop the tariffs, to stop these
Yeah,
strikes.
I read that.
And Trump still said no. And I understand from a capitalist perspective, from a libertarian perspective, and from my own personal perspective, that this is something that the opposition party in Venezuela actually, I believe she just won the Nobel Peace Prize, but she actually told Trump this, that you can agree to what Maduro's going to tell you and agree to the 60, 70 billion dollars that Venezuela is going to give you, but you're never going to see that money because Venezuela will never achieve that under the Maduro regime. And I think that's part of it. And this is something that, and not to segue too far, but I would like to bring up the China aspect of it, the Xi Jinping aspect of this. Venezuela um, is an ally to China. The Belt and Road Initiative of China is something that I've harped on a lot, that I've tried to vocally through our podcast, This Week Explained, not to plug it too much, but
plug it
something
away.
that I've tried to dissuade governments who may be listening, government leadership, get away from the Belt and Road Initiative, because you're never going to, that money's never going to actualize into your bank accounts.
No.
Because it's a control measure. And the moment you get the money, they lose control of you. And so that's, I think,
wouldn't partnering with Venezuela also signal that America is willingly backing both a corrupt and communist-like government, though? Like the total opposite of what we represent. So you can't send that signal to the world.
absolutely not. Yeah, that is part of it. It was interesting to me though, because there's this moment where you could theoretically, let's go in a philosophical sense, in a theoretical sense. Look, I don't know if you're listening to this and you listen to This Week Explained, you know we are on the cusp of World War III. It's not because of strikes on the heads of terrorists in Iran. It's not because of Israel. It's not because of Russia, Ukraine. These are all tiny moments leading up to a global conflict. The Axis and the Allies are coming together. They are putting their heels in the ground. They are drawing their lines. The Allies, the United States, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the Axis, North Korea, China, Venezuela, Colombia, Russia. This is happening. So it's kind of interesting to think about, if I'm a diplomat, could I get Venezuela to move away from China?
Absolutely.
And support the United States. So here's when I first heard about the just the behind the curtains. I actually found out the USS Gerald Ford was moving before anyone else did, because I knew people, and they were like, "Hey, buddy, we're moving. Guess where we're moving to?" And I was like, "Oh, that's wild." You didn't see that reported from me because confidant and sources and stuff like that, but I knew where it was going. The first thing that triggered was so this is like early October.
Huh.
And I was like, oh man, that's kind of interesting, because we have the Panama Canal there. And
Right.
if China makes a move for Taiwan, the Gerald Ford is going to get into that fight to support it much quicker from US Southcom than it is from UCOM. So that started putting triggers in my head that, are we, is the US seeing something in the Indo-Pacific, the US Indo-Pacific Command, Indo-PACOM, that's happening, that they need to get the USS Gerald Ford, try to get them into a fight so that they're trained up for that fight, right? Start an operation so that they know, they're trained up into that operation. And then when a conflict starts in the Indo-Pacific, they are ready, they are trained, and they are motivated to move through the Panama Canal, which is close to Venezuela, which has two ports that have Chinese companies on those ports. if we don't have the Panama Canal to move through, which Trump has already talked about, wanting, and I'm for it, wanting to take control back of the entire Panama Canal. If we don't have that, that entire carrier strike group has got to go through the southern tip of South America. And we look at maps. I don't know if we understand. I'm a maps guy. I was a geospatial intelligence analyst. I understand maps. I don't think the average human understands how vast, first, the South America is, and second, how vast the Pacific Ocean is. And if you do understand that, you know how long that is going to take a carrier strike group to get through there.
Months. Yeah. So I think I'm agreeing with you on a lot of this. You and I talked about the whole World War III, like we're on the cusp of that before. I agree with your assessment for sure. I do. I think the move here with Venezuela after we're having this discussion, the more I'm thinking on this, because like I said, I haven't really been tracking it. I've been so busy. But what I'm hearing is the US is just making a strategic play here, possibly. Because you're correct. China's been trying to control the region for quite some time because that gives them a strategic position in relation to the United States. So with that, if Gerald Ford is sent out there and they're allegedly, reportedly immobilizing 16,000 troops, this could be a play to get Maduro to react, to make him look bad by drawing him into a conflict, by then having the people rise up against him because it's not what they want, for example. And then the US can swoop back in and look like the good guy and regain relations with a different leadership. Now, this also could be viewed as the start of a possible regime change, which, the US has been criticized for many, many times over the years. But I think what a lot of people miss when it comes to geopolitics is, everybody's always war bad, you can't do this, can't do that. But I mean, it's all about power and control. And if it's not us, then who? China, Russia, like someone's going to step up and do this. And you got to ask, what's the world going to look like if that happens? It doesn't defend every little thing we do, but people, I don't think, understand the gravity of the situation at times and why certain things are done.
Yeah, I think in looking at the audience of certain conspiracy theorists and the audience of our content, I think people have their heads in the sand and they would rather just either blame Israel for all of the issues that are happening in the world, or blame the left wing or the right wing, the dichotomy of parties within the United States. There's a much more vast or vaster world than the United States. Look, China wants to be the next United States, the next power. I think they're doing a very good. They're playing very well in the information game, information operations, information warfare. The Biden administration allowed that to happen. I will say. I think the Trump administration, they have flaws. The Biden administration had their pros and cons. The Trump administration has their pros and cons. I think that the Trump administration is doing a lot better job in countering Chinese information. I think that's why you're seeing some of MAGA go against some of what Trump is saying, because he actually sees what is happening in the world. But there is this sort of information game that's playing against colonialism, and it's playing against Israel and the Jews, and it is fed by three factions: the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians. It should not come as a surprise that those are the axis right now. And they are all playing the game together where they go, who can we blame? Who can we get to fight amongst each other in order to do as the art of war has said, which is not to fire a single shot in order to achieve and accomplish your goal, right? That's what China really wants with Taiwan. They want America, they want the United States, they want Australia, New Zealand, Western Europe distracted Western Europe to the point where Xi might ask Putin to just, hey, start a war with NATO, start
Right.
a warm war, as opposed to a hot war with NATO, so that you distract all of Western Europe. The United States is in a civil war because we're fighting about stupidity. We can get into that if you want to, what I consider stupidity that we are fighting about. And you have Australia and New Zealand who are sidelined because they have no one coming to to support them.
Wow.
So this entire game is being played out in the information zone, and we are all being duped to believe certain things.
Well, we're going to talk, but be careful because you're going to be breaking your rule of politics here.
Oh, sorry about that. I'll stay away from
No, 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 no.
In my opinion, I try to stay unbiased, but
It's man, yeah. We all, yeah, we try, but
it's
at
tough.
some point
That's why in the
yeah.
intelligence community we have the analysis of competing hypotheses, right?
Mm.
So I can be very biased on something. Hey, I'm a subject matter expert on Venezuela. This is exactly how I think this is going to happen.
Right.
And then someone from, Western Europe who is a subject matter expert on Western Europe comes in and says, "But don't you think this could happen?"
Yeah.
And then they
From their perspective,
go against each other, and it's sort of like the devil's advocate.
absolutely. So, all right, segue. Let's. I'm going to flip this around. We had an order, but let's just go into the media misinformation and social media. Now you've said, and there's other people have said, where they believe this is all just fueled by Iran and Russia and China, but also in the United States. How much of this is just really not disdain for how the government over the years has been mishandling relations and our own money, and people are just fed up. So is it not a combination of things maybe? Because this is also going to go into our next conversation. We're talking about the Gen Z protests, which we're going to get to for sure, because I know you have a lot to say on that. So I think there's a combination of things. I don't think it's just Russian bots, Chinese bots, Iranian. I don't think it's just that. I think it's timing. I think that the American youth and maybe a lot of people from our generation are starting to be disenchanted with how things have been handled, and they want accountability. They're not getting it. They're seeing that our money and our taxes are being spent on things that we just honestly, average person doesn't understand why. Well, they don't. They don't understand why we're doing the things we do. I've said it many times. And since you brought up Israel, everybody always focuses on how much money we give to Israel. We fund almost 220 or 240 countries and territories around in the entire globe. Like, it's not just Israel. And people don't understand the nuance in that. That's creating relationships, and in some cases, creating leverage for the United States. And some people don't get that. They don't understand that's why we do these things. No different than why China gives loans out to people in Africa or nations in Africa, right? Same type of thing, same approach. So let me get your perspective on what you think is happening. Let's start with social media, for example, because you and I both see it. We both engage and disengage. Like, there's times I take a break and I'm like, I can't handle this anymore, especially when we're talking about X. And I can go over the numbers on X, but let me get your perspective on that.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and I think it is the famous phrase of "never let a good crisis go to waste," right? And
Good one.
I think that's part of two things can be true. You're going to
Yes.
be like Tiana, who tells me to shut up, quit saying
Nope.
this. But it's where the two things are true at the same time. It's where Russian, Iranian, Chinese influence goes over the top onto what is already struggling. Listen, I struggle, you struggle. We are all the only people not struggling in the United States at this point, wondering where our taxes are going, are people like Elon Musk, people like Jeff Bezos. We're talking about the super rich, and I have no problem with the super rich. I am a fan of the super rich, just so everyone knows. Like, you did something, you created something, you don't understand the pain that it took. So anyone who's built a business and had it fail, I don't know about you, George, but I've had that happen. You understand the pain that
Well,
you go
I've
through to
had
make
I've
something
had 6 businesses, so yeah, I
right.
get it.
And if you've had them failed, how painful is that, right? How difficult it is, even in a capitalist country, for your company to succeed because you are compounded with taxes and you're compounded with all of the other things that you have to purchase for that company.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I applaud the billionaires and trillionaires. Do we have a trillionaire? Is Elon Musk the
I think he's
trillionaire
about
as of yet?
there. Last I heard, he
He's
had
about
like,
there.
was it 900 something billion?
I
I
think there
believe that's
was.
what
I
the
thought I
report
saw
was.
something where we were on the cusp of a trillionaire,
Isn't that
and
crazy?
it's wild. But I applaud it
Yeah. I don't,
because
I'm with you.
you.
I don't hate it. It's like, I'm tired of people's jealousy. And I think that's what, as you said, Russia, Iran, China, like, I look at it this way. It's exactly what you said. I'm just going to say this different. They're just pouring gasoline on the fire because
Mhm.
people can't understand why they're not succeeding in life. Now, we're gonna touch on that a little bit because I think that's again combination of things. Like you say, 2 things can be true at the same time. I could say 20 things can be, but I think I'm just saying there's a combination of things because generations before, yes, set up policies and put things in place that made it hard to get ahead financially. I've said this on one of my previous podcasts because the Gen Zers right now are complaining. They can't get a job or they have to work more than one job. They can't buy a house. Cost of living is expensive across the United States, by the way. And real estate in and of itself, it doesn't vary as much as it used to across the United States. If you see a price for a house in California, yeah, it's expensive. But then if you go to a nice area in Georgia, it's not that far apart necessarily. It's really weird how a lot of it has become very even over the years, especially after COVID. Before you'd say, "Hey, I could buy this mansion for 2 million in California, but over in Alabama, I can pay 800 grand." It's not really that far anymore. I mean, a little bit, but not like it used to be. So we have to address that too. We have to address that policies put in place, how banking, how the Fed has handled things. All of that has led up to where we are. And what I would rebut to the Gen Zers is right now we're on the same boat because I've said it. I make a decent income. I'm not rich, but I make okay. I can't go buy a house right now. And running a business, I don't always have that available money put aside to just go, I'm buying this property right now and invest because guess what? Like you said, other things come up that I have to put money back into the business to keep going. So a lot of people don't realize like a lot of us are in the same boat that they are. We're all living this out in real time. It's fucked for everybody. I'm just gonna say it. It really is. It's not easy unless, like you said, you're an ultra rich person. So that combined with what Russia and China and Iran is doing, they're seeing this. They're like, okay, I see where we can. There's a hole starting to form. Let's really punch through that and let's release the bots on social media and let's take advantage of the way people feel.
And George, it's not bots.
No,
It's not bots anymore. So bots are what expand your influence. So if you are not, so for those of us, I'm going to say us, I'm going to put myself in there, who are not influential in the social media game, um, if you don't have bots that are promoting your information,
right?
feel good about that, but understand you're not going to get very far because that's the only way in the
Agree.
moment, as it is right now, before the pendulum swings back um, to what I would call um, authentic content creation. We are living in an age of inauthentic content
Yes.
creation. I can put names out there, and I will right now.
I
People
do.
who are owned by Russia. Tim Pool was bought by Russia. Candace Owens was bought by Russia, by Iran. Um, Tucker Carlson, I don't know why his name escaped me right there for a second, is bought by these bots. They're the only thing that they care about. And you see this a lot when you see someone who is either I was left wing and now I'm right wing, or I was right wing, now I'm left wing, is that they don't have what we call in the military integrity. They have dollar signs in their eyes, and that's all that they care about. And I said specific names. You can go find them wherever. There's probably some people that you can think of that you hate that I would tell you is authentic and would not be swayed by money. They just want to put disgusting content out there. There are people like that as well. But if you're not bought and paid for by these conglomerates or by Russia and China or even in the United States, corporations in the United States, we are living in an age of inauthenticity. It is a fact. I scroll. Look, my wife's not here because we've moved away from each other because I've taken a job where she's going to come out very later. So I spend most of my day just doom scrolling on Instagram and Twitter and YouTube.
That's dangerous.
And 90% of what I see is advertisement, but it is not overt advertisement. It is covert advertisement. It is people making content for corporations, but making it seem like it's authentic. They have an Instagram voice. They have a TikTok voice, a YouTube voice. I do not have that. I cannot come up with a YouTube voice. You probably hear it in the podcast. Like, I am me. That's all I'm going to be. George is who George is going to be. That's why
all we
I
should
keep
be,
talking to George, because I know who he is and what he's going to say.
But that's what we should be.
But these people that have millions of followers and who are, because journalists years ago, especially during the COVID, I think the COVID era kind of started this. Journalists began to not began. The respect for journalists was dying down in like the 2010 timeframe. But COVID really hit home for everybody. They're like, oh, you guys are really just lying to us to achieve a certain goal. I'm going to go to these content creators who feel like me. They talk like me. They have a home like me. They have a family like me. They're being very authentic. And for a brief moment, it was very authentic. These people were authentic about what they were talking about. The things that they were promoting were not advertisements. They were not affiliates. It was things that they just loved and they wanted to promote. And then the money came.
Right.
And then you lost some of those content creators because they said, I'm not going to be a part of this bullshit. So I'm out of it. You guys stick with me, whatever. That's fine. And then you had a group of people who were already in the media field making money, who wanted to make more money. And they identified a crisis that they could jump on and get money out of. So they became independent content creators. They had affiliates, they had bots, they had literal, this came out as a fact. We have tangible proof that people like Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, I still watch Dave Rubin content, but Dave Rubin, they were paid by the Russian government to promote certain stories, and they accepted that money. Writ large, all of them accepted that money.
I remember the Tim Pool thing because he denied and denied and denied, and yet all this evidence came out. And it's funny how they just got swept under the rug and people are just going with it still. They're just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that is what is interesting to me about sort of this Epstein stuff that's coming up, right? Is President Trump in the Epstein files?
You're going hard. Hold on. You're getting outside of your comfort zone.
I will say, I don't know when this is going to come out, but the next episode of This Week Explained, we will have an Epstein segment in there because it kind of deals with the Venezuela.
I'm being facetious because I just want everybody to know our conversations are usually because of Kervin's background as we stick to geopolitics and intelligence because that's what he does. But I'm glad you're speaking on these other things because you're a very smart person And to get your perspective on this, I think it's awesome for people to hear, because too often all we do is hear from, like you said, these political influencers, these podcasters, these debate bros, and we don't get a lot of intelligent opinions or assessments on what's really going on. The only other person recently, outside of you right now, and I kind of put you guys in the same category a little bit, is Ryan McBeth. He just released a few videos lately where he's actually, like, even his role, I don't do politics. And now all of a sudden he's like, he can't stand it anymore. He's like, hold on, let me call out this information warfare thing. Let me talk about what's happening. So I'm glad that you guys are finally going, hold on, guys, we got to explain this, put the brakes on, let's get back to reality. So I'm not, I was being just a little facetious.
So
I welcome
and
it.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate, and also keeping me honest. Tiana does the same thing where she's like, you got to stop. You're getting into your bias and your politics.
No.
I'm like, I'm just trying to see the world like I think I see the world. And what you're hearing are conversations. I think that's why, like, this podcast that you do, World Ablaze, is very important, because you're just having conversations. There is no agenda. Look, if you don't mind me telling people how the sausage is made, this entire thing is a text message that said, hey, what do you want to talk about? It
Right?
was not an agenda of, hey, we need to hit on this, and this, because this is the most popular things that are happening. It was George saying, what do you want to talk about? What are you passionate about right now? This is the same thing that happens for my podcast. Like, Tiana and I don't go, what do you think is going to get us millions of listeners, right? Because if we did that, we would have millions of listeners. We could do an influence campaign.
I mean, if we all towed the line, took the money, and paid for the bots to get us out there, we'd all be huge. But I think what we're doing is awesome.
We'd be set for life. But
so let's talk more.
My military background just told me to stick with integrity, and I can't go away from that.
And I'm going to circle back a bit to what you were talking about with when you threw some of these names out there. And I've got others, like Dave Smith, for example. Whatever. Yeah. I have this thing with him for some reason.
I love you, Dave. We love you.
Yeah. So I'm just using him as an example, another big name. And of course, you brought up Candace. And now we can get into this a little bit later, the whole Nick Fuentes thing going on. Now, you can see, going back to Tucker, for example, and Candace, like the two big ones. What you said earlier is correct, because anyone can go to their social media. If you can go back in their history, you can see how they have just changed their stance with however the wind blows. They're going with the trend. Whatever's going to keep them top of mind and keep the money coming in is exactly the way I see it. Outside looking in, all you have to do is just scroll down, and you'll see the change. And it always coincides with what's hot now, what's happening now, who has a grievance about what. There's no, what's the word? It's not a standard. It's they don't rest on I guess, shoot, I can't bring the word. You know what I'm trying to say though. They're not sticking to what they stand for. That's not what, there's a word for it. I just can't bring it out. But anyway, they're not sticking to what they stand for whatsoever. They're not taking a position. They're not standing on that position. And it's been obvious. And the thing with Tucker that's interesting is how suddenly Islam good, Israel bad, and then when he gets called on it, then he platforms Nick Fuentes, which I don't care that he talked to him, by the way. And I know this has been a hot thing going on right now. Like, honestly, who cares who he talks to? What I cared about in that instance was he just threw softball after softball and didn't press him on anything that Nick Fuentes stands for, like loving Hitler and admiring Stalin, for example, or looking at a utopian Nazi America. He didn't push back on any of that. And even in the interview, when you said he admires Stalin, Tucker said nothing. Nothing. So those things are dangerous. And we got revisionist historians like Daryl Cooper, Martyrmade, that everybody believes has some revealing, amazing information that has never been revealed before, like in all of history. And Ian Carroll's going down that path now. Before he was the conspiracy guy. Now he's just, leeching off Dave Smith's nuts and just thinking that everything that Dave Smith says or Candace says is gold. But really what he's trying to do is ride the wave of popularity. So again, he stays relevant. So there's no integrity out there. There really isn't any integrity. How do we stop the misinformation? Because the only way I can see it, my answer to someone I had last time, they said, "Well, how do we change things? How especially like what you said earlier about MAGAverse, whatever. We're not going to go too deep into that, but I believe you and I, for example, you've always stayed the course. I'm all over the place. I'm kind of bipolar, I guess, but I just call shit out as I see it. I know what's right, what's wrong, and I will call it out. I think if we just continue to say the truth and just stay the course, eventually people are going to see it. And I'm starting to see that when you look at Dave Smith. And if you look at his social media lately, he's been getting a lot more pushback in the comment section. It used to be 1,000%, Dave, you're the amazing guy, everything. Like if you just saw his interview, I don't know if you did, that he did with trigonometry.
With trigonometry, I have not seen it. No,
I actually love those guys.
I won't comment on that. I haven't seen it.
No, you just watch it. All I'm going to say is watch it. They had him on the run, and not intentionally. I don't think it was their intention. They were just asking Dave straight up, especially when it came to Israel Gaza, constantly. Well, in that situation, since you're so opinionated, I'm paraphrasing, what solution would you have proposed? And he would not answer the question. He kept giving other explanations that were unrelated, making other comparisons to other wars, other things. It's like he would not answer the question directly.
You know who also said that, right?
Who's that?
It's Mike Baker on Joe Rogan.
Did he?
Talking about Dave Smith.
Oh, which episode was that? I do listen to his episodes when he's on Joe.
It was the one that you directed me to.
Oh, never mind.
It was like April time frame.
That one, okay.
When they brought up Dave Smith.
Yes, he did.
And Mike Baker said, "Yeah, Dave's a good guy, but I would ask him, what would you do?"
Well, trigonometry they did, and they wouldn't let it go, and they kept asking and kept asking. This isn't a bash Dave thing. I brought this up because it exactly ties into what you were saying. They don't have integrity. I don't think they have the full grasp and knowledge of the situation. I think their history is cherry-picked, very much so. They're going to try to back up what they say by their cherry-picked facts and data, which, as you and I both know, can be very easily manipulated to fit the narrative. And the situation we're in right now is extremely dangerous because it's allowing these guys like the Nick Fuenteses to play off the grievances of the younger generation right now. He's just coming in going, oh, look, they're fighting. He's driving a wedge and he's separating them, and he's getting like a Pied Piper, starting to get people to follow him down a dangerous road. I don't know what you think of Nick, but continuing down this conversation that we're having, these people you claim, not you, sorry, that claim to be independent, like Tucker Carlson's independent. All these people claim to be independent. They all have mega sponsors. Are they truly independent? Are they, like the Patrick Bet Davids and all these people? Like, come on, are you really independent? Let's just be freaking honest.
You got me laughing over here, George. Are they independent? They have a team of 100+ people working for them. They have an advertisement conglomerate who is throwing money out. Is Tucker Carlson independent? No. Like, are you independent? Am I independent? Yes.
Damn
I
right.
have one person who is doing all of my post-production. Oh, guess what? It's me.
Right.
George has a person doing all of his stuff. It's him. Like, that is independent. I think we need to clarify that. Candace Owens is not independent.
No.
Her opinions are not independent. She has a producer. Look, this is writ large, right? You have so I shouldn't just put a name out there. X person who
you're
is
just using
huge.
them for example's sake.
Right.
Let's just say that.
They have a producer that every day they have discussions. Okay, if you say this is going, and it used to be you had a PR team that was like, oh, don't say that. That's not going to do well. And we've kind of shifted into this new world, in this, I think, a very dangerous world, where we now have PR teams who are saying, it's that all news is good news, right? Even bad news can be good news for you. Hey, if you say that and we can clip it, like, none of what they are saying is said ad hoc. They're not just saying things off the top of their head. They have points that they want to hit. They know what they want to say, to the point of, this is going to do very well on X, Twitter. This is going to do very well on Rumble. This is going to do very well on TikTok. And you'll see, this is why you'll notice different clips from these individuals on different platforms. So you're not going to see the same clip on X from a Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens that you're going to see on TikTok, because it's a different algorithm, and they understand that. And so they're saying a ton of different things to feed that algorithm. What I found very interesting was, and maybe it was like NPR or Pod Save America or something like that, who was having like an existential crisis because, and I was just watching a reel with them talking about it, of like, oh, do you know, like, if you talk bad about, like, they're like, we talk bad about Israel, because we're left wing and we think, we don't like Israel's right wing government.
Right.
And then people who watch our videos are being inundated with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes videos. And they're like, that's very disturbing. And I'm like, no, guys, that's the algorithm. Like, you are saying the same things that they are saying, and they understand that. Like, you don't, Pod Save America, I don't remember what it was, but whoever you are, you think you are the total opposite of these individuals that you hate. Tucker Carlson, I would say they hate those individuals.
I'm sure.
And yet you're feeding the same algorithm. Like, you are the problem, not the, I wouldn't say the algorithm is the problem. I think those who are saying things knowing that they are going, because you want to make money. You are a corporation. You are a company. You want to make money off of that. That's the dangerous world we live in right now.
Yeah. So when it comes to algorithm, though, how do we break that? Because aside from truth and integrity, which is what it should always be about, unfortunately, pocketbook, your pockets are filled by rage. It's all rage bait, man. It's just rage and conflict and opposition. And when we're talking about someone like Candace, she went down the road of being, her podcast now mostly like a true crime thing? I don't even know if she even talks about anything relevant in politics. She has a different theory on Charlie Kirk's assassination. She's making money off of it. She has zero receipts, by the way.
Oh, it will change once the new thing pops up. So look, Charlie Kirk is the new hot thing.
Right.
When it changes to something else, she is going to flip and forget all about Charlie Kirk.
But her thing, and not just to bash on her, but since she's the number one podcast, apparently, what's crazy is she always has a secret source she can never reveal, can't show you all the information because it's been redacted, or that the phone company wouldn't let her have the text messages, or whatever the case is. Special friends, fellow, they had whatever, they're no longer talking, but she knows, just her exclusively, never reveals a damn thing. And she never brings any receipts, but just talks in a way that it kind of like, it's just a leading question. It's like, I'm just asking questions. This could happen, possibly, maybe. I have this information, but there's more to come. So she keeps people hooked. She's good at it. She knows what she's doing, but never, ever revealing anything. And that's why, sometimes I respond to her posts. I'm like, yeah, what's up with that vagina case? What's going on with that? Like, all of a sudden we walked away from that. You haven't produced receipts on that. You're being sued by the French government. And here you are on the cusp of probably being sued by TPUSA. And it's like, she doesn't care because these influencers, and I don't even call them political commentators anymore because they're so far from it. They're not analyzing anything. All they're doing is exactly what you said. They're chasing the money. But we have a problem here, because how do we get away from feeding that algorithm? Because, if you see a monkey dancing around dressed up in a red dress, you're going to watch it, right? And this also leads to, everyone can say, oh, well, Candace Owens has 7.9 million or 8 million followers. Yeah, but how much those people aren't just watching because they like watching clowns pile out of a car, or do backflips, whatever. Like, is it not just entertainment at some point? Because people like true crime also doesn't mean that you support the serial killer. You just find it interesting.
Are you not entertained?
Exactly. So I think social media is giving people the wrong impression on just based on followers, for example, on who is actually telling the truth, who's actually really relevant versus who is really just being nothing more than entertainment. What's your take on social media in regard to followers? Because you already talked about the algorithm, and I'm not sure. And if you have another answer for me based on my question on how do we break that, because again, we're humans. We look at what's shiny and new and what's cats dancing and playing violins. Of course, yeah. What the hell is this? Even though it's an AI video, but if you have a solution or an answer to that, I'd love to hear it. But also, how are we all being influenced by looking at someone's followers and thinking that, oh wow, they got millions of followers. These guys must be the person I must listen to.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great point. To your first question, do I have an answer? No. If I had an answer, I'd have billions of dollars. If I had
You'd
an
be Elon
answer
Musk.
to how do we stop? Yeah. Because even I will. You'll hear me. I mean, I even posted on X or even on Instagram of like, I am not going to engage in this, and then I engage
Right.
in it. Right. I'm disengaging. I'm just a human, and I'm going to do it. So I do not, unfortunately, have an answer other than the obvious answer of do not engage, but understanding we're humans and we're just going to do that. And I'm going to do that. Now to the broader question there
Mhm.
of like, what is, I guess your question is like, how do we help people understand that your follower count doesn't amount to your level of intellect, I think. And this is why when Musk bought Twitter, the journalists, and I harp on journalists a lot. I know that.
Hold
I
on.
have good friends.
There's these days, most of what you see on social media, they're pseudo journalists.
I'm talking real actual. I went to
All right.
journalism school, communications. I have a degree in journalism. Um, this is why they were so upset with Elon Musk buying Twitter. It is because they understood that blue check mark, that follower count that they had meant something to humans. It meant you were respected, you were influential, and that your voice mattered. And this happened. This is part of the reason why Musk bought Twitter, is because there was this toxic environment of people like you and me, people, everyday citizens who had 500, 1,200, 5,000 followers, no blue check mark, who were making comments into the ether, who were making actual factual analysis and putting it out into the ether, and we were being, or those accounts were being disregarded as, oh, you're just another conspiracy theorist, oh, you're a nobody, oh, you have 250 followers, who the hell are you anyway? And these journalists, because they're, the New York Times and the Washington Post and all of the BBC bought these followers and brought these followers to these journalists, were identified, and I'm talking like 2015, 2016 timeframe. They were brought in as these are the subject matter experts on all things, right? And that is a toxic part of Twitter, and it's still, that has not changed since Musk bought Twitter. That is still a toxic portion of Twitter, where if you make a comment, right, helicopter goes down, the Iranian president died in a helicopter crash. This happened over a year ago, and you make a comment on that about what that could mean for the state of Iran and things like that, and people would come in and go, oh well, look at you now, today you are a helicopter expert. And it's like, that's not what I'm saying.
Right.
I am just making a point that I'm seeing, like, I am a red, educated, intellectual individual with logic, and I am making these logical statements. And you have, so there are two things that people do. If you make a logical statement that is probably what I consider is probably a good analysis and a good assessment, is they'll either attack the way you look. They'll go, "Oh, look at you, fat ass. Look at you, wonky eye, cauliflower ear, whatever."
Well, now
Or
it's
they'll,
you're a Zionist or a Jew.
well, or yeah,
Yeah.
you're a Zionist. I'm glad that you got your $6,000
Yeah,
from Israel.
exactly.
And so here's the ad portion of the show, not to take it over, but we would like to thank Israel for paying the $6,000 for us to talk
That's all you got?
good about them. I wish. Yeah.
Jeez. Oh, I need to
No, but
negotiate for
it's
you.
a toxic part of social media in general.
I agree with you.
Now, and it's what it, I can't think of the term right now, but it's your social clout, right? It's just like in high school,
Oh,
right? How many friends do you have? What is your friend group?
Right, and-
Who are your friends?
Have you seen this recently, Kervin? Because everything you're saying is correct. Have you seen how people now are trying to on social media show how relevant they are, or how important they are based on their? I guess there's a place where you can see how you rank on X, and it's based on engagement.
I've not seen this.
Yeah, so people are responding to, like, let's say Ben Shapiro puts out a post, for example, and people are like, "Oh, you're not relevant. Nobody's listening to you." And then they go, "Look, my X score is higher than yours. Ben Shapiro's is 2,000, mine is 62 based on interactions and this and this and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, but Shapiro has 7.9 million followers and you have 500. It's not. We're not even in the same."
So
pool
I
here,
will
buddy.
say, and even through the age of social media, do you want to know my gauge for how influential you are? This has been true since the 1970s.
This proven works all the time.
It works every time. And when I say it,
Let's
I
hear
hope you agree with me. If you have been, if you have been made fun of or promoted or been on Saturday Night Live, that is how you know how influential you are. If you have been made fun of, Ben Shapiro,
Right.
Trump, all of these people who everyone laughs at, well, they've all been made fun of, or they have been on Saturday Night Live. It still stands true how bad that show is in this day and age.
Agreed.
That is how you know you've made it. Ask anyone. How do I know I've made it? Well, they parodied me on Saturday Night Live. I know I've made it.
I like that. I've got 2 of those going for me right now, so maybe I'm climbing the
There
ranks.
you go.
All right, let's circle to something a bit more serious that kind of aligns more with your I'll just say your intellect and your background. Let's talk about the whole anti-Israel thing going on and being parodied on social media. Can you shed any light on that? Why is it suddenly Israel bad? Israel is the eye of the world. This small dot over there in the Middle East is apparently the one little thing the size of New Jersey that rules the entire world and actually rules America. What do you have to say on all of this? Like, what is going on with this, and why is it being perpetuated? Why does it continue to be the driving message to divide our nation?
Yeah, there's a ton to unpack there.
Yes.
The
And you
first
got
thing I
time.
will say is that as many people who would say that, excuse me,
That's
that
right.
the Jews control everything and have all the money, the quickest way to make money is to blame the Jews, is to blame Israel.
Yeah, these days you're right.
It's been, and you said these days, this is historically factual for thousands of years. This is something that, go back into the annals of history. The Jews have been promoted as the controlling the world, or controlling the area that they're in. So ancient Egypt,
Yeah.
the Roman Empire,
Yeah,
they have all
absolutely.
hated.
I guess my statement, as in these days, is we're in a different time where now we have social media, internet, everything. Like when you see about what seems to be 90% of all influencers, and again, I'm going to go journalists. I know you say journalists, but I don't see a lot of journalism going on these days. When you have all these people just parroting the same narrative, it's a moneymaker. You're correct. And these days, like, I'll be honest, did we see it this bad in the 90s?
No, absolutely not.
I guess that was my point, So that's where I was coming from on that. But as far as the history, you're right.
Yeah,
The Jews have always
for
been the bad guy, right?
they have, and like you said, did we see it in the 90s? We did not, but I'll tell you, in the Arab world, they did.
Right.
The Israel was the great evil, and when people say, "Oh, I'm just commenting," Dave Smith, I'm just commenting on Israel. I'm
Asking
just
questions.
I don't mean the Jews.
Right.
What is the only Jewish state in the entire world? Israel.
Yeah.
How
that's it.
many? What's the only Arab state in the entire world where there's not just one?
Arab or Muslim?
There are
It's like
a bunch
55 or so,
of Arab
right?
states. So what is the only Buddhist state, right? And we can go down. What's the only Christian state? Well, the Roman Empire. Italy, Rome was built on Christianity. The Judeo-Christian values in the United States, but there is only one Jewish state where the majority of the people are Jewish. That's Israel.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, that was part of what Hamas. That was part of the gamble that Hamas went with. They said, "We are going to do this, and if you have seen the videos, if you have not seen the videos of what Hamas did on October 7th, don't watch those videos. If you have not talked to the people who were in Israel when that happened, do not talk to those people, because it will destroy your life." The barbarian tactics, the rape and killing of young women that happened on that day. To answer the question for Dave Smith, what is the only reaction you can have to that, is a complete annihilation of the people who did that. So I agree, Hamas should be annihilated because of what they did. I would agree, if someone did the same thing to my daughters, they would be killed. And I would stand in front of a judge and I would tell that judge, "Hey, look, you got to let me know that I was righteous in my endeavors when I did that." That's how brutal and barbaric it was. Hamas understood that we are living in an age, starting in the early 2010s, where this view of Israel was being turned, right? It's actually started in like 2005, I believe, when the Palestinians were able to take over the West Bank, and Israel kind of pushed back against that. There were these conversations within mainstream media, the Western media, BBC, led by Al Jazeera, which is not an unbiased organization when it comes to Israel, saying that Israel is being overly barbaric. They're
Israel's a terrorist state.
Israel is a terrorist state.
Yeah.
There should be a two-state solution, right? Well, there's only one country that agreed to a two-state solution.
Yeah. All
Israel.
12 to 14 times it was proposed.
Israel agreed that there should be a two-state solution. Hey, Palestine, go police your own. Let us stay over here. Has Israel done things that I don't agree with? Yes, absolutely. Have they been barbaric in some of their tactics? Absolutely. But as I said, if you were to see the videos, if you were to talk to the people who were there, like I have, you would come away with a totally different opinion of it. And I think that was part of the Dave Smith conversation on Rogan, right? Where you have to remind me of who he was debating at that time, who asked him.
Douglas Murray, I believe.
Douglas Murray. He said, "Have you been there?"
Yeah.
And both Rogan and Dave laughed and said, "I don't have to be in a location to understand." And I will say, yes, you do sometimes have to be in a location to understand. That is why when I go places as an intelligence analyst, I go to the countries that I'm a subject matter expert in so that I can better understand the situation that's there. Because you're not getting everything.
Let's do this since we're talking about October 7th, Israel. I wasn't going to have this conversation, but let me play the other side just so we can get some honest, real answers from an analyst. So the pushback is, I believe Israel should have done what they did. And I've said this many times, and I'm sure you may agree, the U.S. would have done far more. We would have not messed around whatsoever when it came to that. Israel was never consistent in their strikes or in their operations against Hamas. There was a lot of start, stop, pause. They were not continuous in their efforts. It's a different kind of war. You got a very, very small geographical location that kind of bottlenecks. Like it's not very wide as it is long. So with all of that, though, people say, well, why didn't Israel just do special operations and strategic strikes against Hamas? I know you know the answer you're going to tell me, but I'm just going to ask that question. Why didn't they do that?
Yeah, because we're not talking about caves in Afghanistan or Iraq. We are talking about urban warfare. Urban warfare does not allow for strategic strikes. We do it even in the United States. We attempt strategic strikes on certain locations if we know that location only holds a terrorist headquarters, right? We've done this in Yemen, in certain urban areas. Urban warfare is the worst warfare you can ever be a part of because the rules of engagement go out the window. And Israel had to get into urban warfare, right? So strategic strikes. What do you want them to strike? Hamas is in a school. Hamas is underground of a hospital. The answer to that would be, well, then just don't strike anything. Send IDF forces into those tunnels. So then, just like Star Wars, I have the higher ground. What are you going to do, right?
Right.
Hamas is going. They don't have the higher ground. They have the underground, but they have the advantage in those tunnels, right? So they then booby trap tunnels, right, and explode them. That is an issue that an operation has to deal with, that the IDF has to deal with. Going in blindly. Okay, there are Hamas fighters in this tunnel, but I don't know where they are because they're in tunnels. So now you're going to push IDF forces into a tunnel and have them all killed because they don't know what's going in there. That's just not feasible. No infantry commander, whether it's the United States or the IDF, is going to agree to go into those urban areas and fight like that. So you cannot do targeted strategic strikes. I do push back on some people who say Israel did the most effective and least collateral of all strikes ever that happened in war. That is absolutely false. I was in certain urban areas where we did very strategic, very targeted strikes and only targeted terrorist factions. We did not hit mosques or buildings or headquarters. We hit individuals, and it was one for one round on one head. Israel wasn't doing that. They went scorched earth.
Right.
That is a decision that they were comfortable with. And that's because the operation said to dismantle all of Hamas. So if you're going to say, I'm going to dismantle all of Hamas and then not do anything, you've just failed in your operation. Were women and children killed? I know there's a lot of reporting on, yeah, but these are just Hamas numbers. No women and maybe I don't know anybody who said no women and children were killed. That is devastating. That is heartbreaking as someone who has a wife and kids. However, that is what Israel decided to do. They had their own women and children murdered and raped and taken. And they said, we are going to go an eye for an eye. And until you stop, we are going to make it painful, not only for you, Hamas, as an organization, but also for the people that you say that you govern.
So what do you say to those who are against what Israel did and how they handled that border? For example, Palestinians, innocent Palestinian people who were caught in the middle. Why did they not let them escape? Right. The answer has always been, well, you can't differentiate between Hamas, who's embedded with the Palestinians or the civilians, versus who the Palestinian civilians really are. That has always been the answer. Do you think, like, okay, going back to that question that was asked of Dave Smith, for example, in the interview, what would you propose? Would not a better way in exposing Hamas would be Israel to gain favor with the Palestinians, to get them to out Hamas themselves and try to get the Palestinians to work against Hamas, and saying, hey, here they are, because they were not in favor of the Palestinians. And after the ceasefire agreement that just happened, what did Hamas do? They turned on their own people. So what do you think of that? I'm not saying it is the solution, but what do you think of the fact that was not pursued? Did Israel drop the ball there in this information warfare aspect, in terms of gaining favor with the people and getting in there and trying to collaborate and work with the actual Palestinians who did not want Hamas there?
So it was certain. There were certain clans within Palestine that worked with Israel and the IDF to try to root out Hamas from there. Now that's a very small minority, 1% to 2%, I would say, of the Palestinian people within Gaza. They also dropped leaflets saying,
Right.
please move out of this area. And the reason I bring that up is not to say that, oh, this is what Israel tried. Why didn't the Palestinian people agree to it? There is a fundamental trust issue between Arabs and Jews, between Islam and Judaism, Israel and the Arab states. There's this fundamental thousands of year trust issue between the two clans. And that's human nature, right? We're tribal.
Okay, I get that. Hold on, I get that. But what about the people who say, well, there's thousands of Muslims that live in Israel and they don't have a problem, right? Yes, there's a distrust, and we can absolutely talk about that deeper, because I know this is one of your areas of expertise, is that region. But there's always that pushback. Okay, so leaflets, are they enough? Or you're just saying, hey, move out, we're going to do this. But is that really reaching the people to work with them? Because what you said about the clans is absolutely correct. And I mean, I don't have to correct you. This is what you do. But from what I know is correct. And after that ceasefire, they absolutely started fighting those clans, right? So,
Yep.
But you said it's only like 2%. That's not gaining favor with all the people. And even though there's a distrust, I mean, does this show that the Palestinian people were willing to go through this abuse and allow Hamas to engage in Israel in this war and further destroy their home for the sake of, like, I don't like Jews?
I think that is a part of it. But I also think that the other part of it is realized in the after effects of the ceasefire, right? So Hamas is being very brutal in tampering down uprisings. That didn't just happen after the ceasefire. It was only reported on after the ceasefire.
Right.
This has been happening since the very beginning. So when we talk about, well, Israel's not letting in all this grain into, they're not letting in these aid trucks. Well, there's two reasons for that. One is that some of the aid trucks are UN aid trucks that we've found out Hamas was in control of those aid trucks. The other part of it was those aid trucks were coming through, but Hamas had taken all of the goods of that and were only handing it out to people who would pledge allegiance to Hamas as an organization. So you have an indoctrination of people. So there is a large majority of people within Gaza. This has nothing to say about their intellect or anything like that. But if you were inundated with the same news every day and didn't have anything, it's just like, people within Russia and China. If you were only told state media news, you will believe state media news.
True.
So when Israel drops a leaflet that says, "Hey, we are about to attack this location to get rid of Hamas fighters," you should really leave to the south, and you watch the news or listen to the radio, and it says Israel is actually getting people to move to the south so that they can bomb the south and kill civilians. What are you going to do as an individual, as a Palestinian? You're probably going to listen to your government and your media. We're not talking about Americans here, right? And I'm being very honest about this. I think Americans are very different in how we think and react to things. Like if CNN, look, we did this for COVID. If CNN tells us to do something, if Fox News tells us to do something, we're probably going to go, I'm not going to do that. I don't trust them.
The majority, yeah.
That isn't true in a lot of the world. In the UK, if BBC says something, the majority of UK citizens is going to go, oh, yeah, okay, I better do that. Right? If the UK government says you should not move south because there's bombs coming to the south, you're going to go, oh, well, the government just told me don't go there, so I'm just going to stay right here.
I think a lot of it has to do with America being founded on a distrust of government in general.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I want you to understand, Kurt. I'm just playing the other side. I
love it.
Yeah, like, I'm not trying to say I believe
all of our thoughts out there.
Yeah. I'm not saying I believe this or that. I just want your informed opinion on it. And when I said earlier about stuff that plays your intelligence, it really meant that what we're talking about, social media, very important. But I think you're much smarter than that. And I wanted to really understand your perspective in this situation, because now we're going to go into the information warfare space and how Israel, I believe, dropped the ball in that. They let Hamas lead them, and that led to this anti-Israel sentiment in America as well. Do you have anything to say on that? Because I know you do. Let's go ahead and let you take the floor on this.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It goes back to thousands of years of history, right? But I also think some of that plays into we talked about, right? You mentioned, this didn't happen in the 90s, and look, the early 2010s, right? We condemned Holocaust deniers and Nazi sympathizers, writ large, And I even condemned people who were like, some people even saying Ben Shapiro is a Nazi sympathizer. I'm like, are you kidding me? The 100% Jewish guy is a Nazi sympathizer? I don't think he is. I pushed back against that. I pushed back against all of that. I am seeing a very dangerous conversation going on in the United States and around the world. And some of that, I think, and I'd like to talk about it in real world, tangible evidence that I've seen in dealing with people that I've dealt with. When I say deal with, people I've interacted with, I guess I should say, because these are people I like. And when I say dealt with people, it usually means I put a round on the top of their head, but that's not what I'm talking about here.
Okay.
So I think part of this is understanding when World War II was, right?
Okay.
About 10 years ago, was it maybe 10 years ago? Peter Jackson put together the film for World War I because we were down to no more individuals from World War I had survived or were living anymore. And he wanted a film that documented the atrocities of World War I, so that we don't see that trench warfare again.
Right.
I think now in 2025, we are at that we are at this inflection point where World War II is a distant memory. It's not a secret. I'm in Germany right now. That is almost, we are very close to 100 years from the people of Germany, from the people in the United States, in Western Europe, dealing with the effects of World War II, where we don't have a dad or a grandfather or someone in our family who fought in that war. We only have the information from that war. We have the textbooks. This is very dangerous. When those textbooks, that information, people are allowed without pushback to say certain things in the information space as fact. I think that's why like books are important, right? Reading a book
Right.
as opposed to doing what I do on a day-to-day basis, which is watch YouTube videos a lot. I mean, we all do that. Reading a book that shows, and you do this as well, George. I love what you do in sourcing your information.
I try.
We do not have enough people like you sourcing information, especially from World War II. All we know was that was a war and it was bad, and I don't want it to happen again.
You know what, Kervin? I think there's a few other independents that you and I both know that I think us independents tend to do that. We tend to actually say, this is where I got the info. Good or bad, at least we can say, this is where I got it from. And then you could challenge us based on that. We don't see that with the mainstream people too often anymore.
Mm-mm.
And
yeah, their sources are, I have a source I can't put out there.
Right.
The source is speaking on the condition of anonymity because they can't speak about this.
Can I say something really quick
That
about
doesn't-
reading the books? Because in today's age, with all of this revisionist history and misinformation, because you're talking about World War II, and I know the people you're alluding to. I've actually said their names earlier. How can we even trust books anymore, though? How do we know that the institutions aren't taking these publications from when they were like in the moment, relevant, and telling the story as it unfolds? How do we know that we can trust the new editions coming out, or even if we could find those old publications anymore? Because I'll go every once in a while. I'll still go into a library, and I'm like, I was a big book guy. I used to read all the time. And lately I go in the library, I'm like, man, this is Google. Like, this was Google, right? The only thing is, you didn't have as much access. Like, you're limited to whatever was on the shelf, but physically searching and seeking out something and like turning the page and reading it, you just take it in differently. But now if I go to that library, if there's a certain edition I want, all of a sudden, well, it's not there anymore because it no longer fits the narrative or the way we educate students, for example. It's a little different. We can't say those things, or we can't expose them to that, so we're going to pull it. So how can we even trust what's going on right now with books as well, as far as printed material?
Yeah, man, it's scary. We are in a very dangerous age, right? I alluded to that I think at the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah.
Who do we trust, right? We can't trust anyone. And a lot of people will go, well, let's blame Donald Trump. Can't trust anybody because he deals loosey-goosey with the facts. And it's like, no, you, the media, were very loosey-goosey with the facts.
Right.
Like, we trusted you. And then when we outed you as lying about things, you doubled down on the lie and then you covered it up. Yeah, we are in a very dangerous state. There's a lot. I don't think we have enough time to go into everything that I have a problem with what's going on there. 1984. Read it. Read the original volume of 1984.
Yes.
It's gonna look just like today, and it's not right wing. It's not left wing. I know what it was written about, but it is not just about communism. It is not just about capitalism. It is about people in power wanting to control what everyone is saying. And we are doing it to ourselves, George. When we say things like, this person unalived themselves, or we put an ampersand on Hamas, so
Right.
that we censor ourselves. This is why I won't do that. You know that I speak that in public a lot. I don't care if I have 5 likes on an Instagram post because it says Hamas and it talks about killing, or it says Israel struck and killed 5 babies.
Right.
I am not going to censor myself and put it out into the public just to appease an audience. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to give you accurate figures, and I'm going to tell you exactly what happened. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. You know that.
Yeah.
If you listen to the podcast, my wife will tell you that. I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm typically not going to tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what's actually happening.
So
It's dangerous.
But that speaks to media personalities. And we can call ourselves that because this is media.
Yep. I'm a public figure, if you didn't know.
I mean, yeah, right. Literally. Having, taken the burden of responsibility and being responsible in what we say, and I think knowingly spreading misinformation just to gain favor with your sponsors and just increase your coffers with gold or whatever is irresponsible for sure, because there are malleable minds out there who will take everything that is said as fact, as the gold standard, as in like, holy shit, you're right. The white people need to unite and we need to abolish all of the immigrants and anybody who's a colored person. We need to get back to Hitler wasn't such a bad guy, what he was saying. Like, we can't be saying those things. Like, you need to have a responsibility to understand what the reaction of the average person, I don't mean average as in stupid. What I mean by that is average person is too fucking busy. You and I take the time to do this stuff, right? The average person doesn't. They're going on with their day. They hear the headline in the news like, holy shit, that's what's going on? They move on. They're not doing the deep dive. And if all they hear are these headlines that are just saying, Hitler wasn't bad. Churchill he's the one that instigated World War II. America is in trouble because it's being overrun by brown people. You say that enough, like you said earlier, when the government, if that media is all you hear day in, day out, it breaks you down and you start to believe it. And that's where the danger is. And I can't understand why this shift is happening in America. So I want to get back because I want to wrap this up and move on to Gen Z, just for the sake of, respecting your time here.
I'll just say one thing to that is, I understand what you're saying there. And what we always tell people is do your research.
Oh, absolutely.
You have to, like, the people who are yelling at you on the other side of that 12-inch screen that you have in your hand. I was listening to one video where it was like, the CIA created the term conspiracy theorists. And I was like, that doesn't seem right. So I did my research and I looked at it. I was like, do you know when the first time the term conspiracy theorist was created? It was the early 1800s. The CIA was not existent at that time. And it was the media who was coining the term conspiracy theorist, which is how terms get coined.
That's interesting.
In the lexicon. And the information that this woman was spewing out about the CIA, which I have no love lost for the CIA, but the information she was saying was from one paragraph of a declassified document.
I think I know who you're talking about.
And I believe it was on Israel. And it was like they coined conspiracy theorist to control, and it was the only time the word conspiracy theorist, and it wasn't theorist, it was something else, was in that document, a 100-page document. This one redacted or this one declassified part of it, and it was like that's how conspiracy theories, expand. There's a hint of truth in it, but if you don't do the research, it's so fantastical that you're like, oh my God, I've been lied to my whole life. But then when you do your research, you go, oh, well, this woman's an idiot. I'm never going to watch this again.
I run into that a lot on social media when it comes to people making statements about terrorism in the Middle East and Islam and not understanding the history. And it goes back nearly 1,400 years. And the first recorded instance of terrorism is actually Islamic terrorism, and I cannot ever say their name correctly. It was Kharijites, I believe, is how an American like me would pronounce it. And that goes way back. And people are online are like, the U.S. is responsible for every terrorist organization in the Middle East. No, it's terrorism has been a 1400-year tradition. I'm sorry, and it was mostly against other Muslims to keep other Muslims in line. We didn't come into the picture until what when we may have contributed to terrorism was when in Afghanistan, when we were trying to push back and help the rebels against Russia or communists taking over. That's when that happened, and it wasn't our fault that jihadist people were involved in that revolution that came away with training and money that was funneled to them by Pakistan. So it's like that's why I say people live on the surface of information, and it really bugs me. But and if I'm incorrect in any of that, you could correct me. But what I wanted to do was circle back to was I on that? Because that was just the research I've been doing.
Yeah, you're on that. But I think you're going to do a perfect segue because I think this fits into the Gen Z uprisings that we're seeing.
Take it away.
So yeah, I think part of that is the influence of social media. Look, I for one am loving the Gen Z uprising. I guess I'm considered a millennial. My generation, luckily, just didn't. We fought wars. We didn't do anything else but that.
When were you? Hold on. You're a millennial. When were you born?
83.
Okay.
I think that fits the millennials.
And I get along with you. I'm a Gen Xer.
Yeah. There we go. So we're on like there was always that cusp there of like who's.
I see why we have these issues sometimes now.
Yeah, but we are the children of baby boomers, and I'm bringing in these generations just to show how the world has evolved over time, right? So we
let's
had
get back to that. Let's get back to what's going on with Gen Z because I'm sorry, I just want to push you into it because what's happening around the world is a major movement that is being driven by a disdain for the old guard, the governments, and how they're doing things. Especially like what's going on in Africa, where basic necessities to live, like food, water, shelter, electricity, these things that the government hasn't been doing in Kenya, if I'm correct, I know you know more than I on this.
Madagascar.
I was going to say about the recent tax hike all of a sudden, right? That was being imposed, and people are just like they got fed up, and it's the younger generation that's saying we're not gonna take this. And from what I understand. With Africa right now, like the younger generation, they're more tech driven now. They're becoming more modern. They want to enter into the modern world, and they feel they're being held back. There's no opportunity, and they're communicating with each other across the globe. You know, it happened in Peru, Nepal. Like, it's not. I don't think it's an isolated incident. I think that they're communicating, and it's spreading. And I'm going to give you the floor on this because this is something that I know you really wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and you hit it right there, nail on the head. It's spreading right now. It is emerging economies, right? So we're talking Asian and African countries whose economies are not well off. There was just an election in an African country. It escapes my name right now, and I should know that. My bosses will be very upset that I don't remember the name here, but they just elected a president who, by the end of their term, will be over 100 years old.
Wow.
That might not sound very far off to the American audience that's listening right now, right?
Yeah.
So you have an individual who will be 100 when their presidency ends, who was elected in what the younger population considers an unfair election. They are the president is the child of a former leader, so you have nepotism. Their children are going off to Western Europe into these lavish vacations and locations, and they're posting it on social media like idiots. But they are posting it while these young Gen Zers who are just coming up in age into the workforce, who cannot make a living wage in these countries are suffering. They have to go on TikTok and on Instagram, old people TikTok, Instagram Reels, and they have to see their peers who are just running off to Paris and at a moment's notice, and they are still poor farmers living off of their minuscule wages. Like that is going to cause an uprising. We have in the intelligence community what are called indicators, and we track those indicators based off of probably all the countries. I can't be 100% on that, but we track indicators, right? Fuel, that's an indicator. Food, that's an indicator. Lack of clean water, that's an indicator, right? When these indicators converge, people get pissed.
Right.
This is what's happening in Gen Z. And what I was bringing up with like myself, like a millennial, we just did what our parents, our boomer parents told us to do. And then we did what the US government told us to do, which is go to fight a war. And we just said, that's the world. But we taught our kids to not feel that way. Like you can be better. You can have a better life than we had. And I think we are very, not to promote millennials and Gen Xers, but we're very selfless in that regard. In like, I don't care that it happened to me, but it's for sure not going to happen to my kids. And I think that's what we're seeing with the Gen Zers. Technology is a part of that. And right now, right, everybody's saying, well, these are third world countries. I don't really like the term third world country. I like emerging economy because these countries can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. So that's happening in emerging economies, but it is coming to Western Europe. It is coming to the United States.
Okay. So that I believe is a big part of it too. Like, for how long have these countries been considered third world or emerging? Does that not speak to the continued corruption of those governments? Because they get aid from us, they get aid from other countries. You know, France obviously has been involved in the African continent forever. So it's like the money's coming in, just like you said, not being applied to the country. Like most of these places have no real infrastructure whatsoever. And their leaders are, like you said, gallivanting in France, eating lobster and steak, and just shaking hands and smiling, drinking champagne. Like, of course.
Yeah, what happened here is France was blamed, the United States was blamed, colonialism was blamed, and it was kicked out. Get out of here. In lieu of Russia and China, not to bring back. I don't know what people are going to say about me.
I was
always bringing up Russia and China.
I was actually going to bring China up.
But Mali in particular is a country in Africa that is understanding that we kicked the US, we kicked France out, and we allowed Russia in, and they have done nothing for us. We are actually worse off. So these Gen Zers are seeing that, and they're understanding, colonialism wasn't the issue. It's our government. It's the people in power right now in our own country that are the issue. Now, the problem with that is that typically when a government is overthrown, the new government isn't always the best government. This is something I pushed back on in the early stages of the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where people said, well, just go kill Putin. And I said, well, who are you going to put in place of Putin? It's probably going to be someone worse. And that's why the US regime change doesn't work. I wouldn't want to see that in Venezuela with Maduro. It doesn't work. The person who changes power typically is worse. Look at North Korea. Look at China, right? We wanted Mao out of there. What we got instead is someone who is far smarter and far more globalist than we had before. And so that's the huge issue here. That is some of the concerns that I'm looking for in 2026 to see where these protests go to and what happens with them, because that new leadership could be far worse.
I completely agree. Absolutely. Because history has shown that to be true. I also want to say something else though. When you were saying about Gen Z, like these generations are realizing, for example, no, it was the government that was a problem. It wasn't colonialism or the US, for example, or France or Britain. But for example, let's say that this situation they're in where their corrupt government never took care of the people and basically just, I mean, pillaged and raped them financially, and also in terms of their natural resources for their own gain. This also, I believe, because the situation they're in as a person, as a people, every single day, this is exactly the scenario or the situation that is ripe for socialism to enter in, because it's make everything even. We're going to take care of you. We're going to bring you up. They take out the idea of having to compete, let's say on the grand stage of capitalism, for example, because in a lot of people's minds, capitalism isn't fair. It's like, why is that guy rich and I'm not? Why does this cost this much and this doesn't? And so when you have, I know you say emerging economies, so I'm going to use that, emerging economic countries where these people don't have any resources and are basically shit on every day, socialism sounds great. So they reject the norm, or not the norm, but they reject, governments like ours, for example, because from the outside looking at us, they're like, well, it sounds good, but is it really going to take care of me? Because this guy over here is saying we're all going to get a piece. We're all even. Do you agree with any of that? Is that a possibility?
I do. I do, in especially like Western Europe. That's a big thing. I think those emerging economies in Asia could see that happen. But I would also get people's radars up about, especially within the African countries, and then moving into Europe, is these lower level Islamic terrorist
Oh,
organizations are
absolutely.
no longer wanting to be known as terrorist organizations. They want to be seen as legitimate governments. And they're going to start in the Western Sahel of Africa by creating a, a government that looks a lot like Iran, where it is Sharia law, and they're going to control the people, and it's going to be better than what Mali had before, but it is going to be more authoritarian,
Yeah.
and that's going to be very dangerous. And so we go back to the information warfare, right? The more the media promotes of, well, look, another fantastic Arab state. Look, we got Syria. Oh, it's now run by a former terrorist leader. Well, look at how great it's doing now. If that shifts the narrative to pro, and this goes into like socialism and things of that nature, goes into a more of an authoritarian globalism, then we are in an even more dangerous state than I think we are right now.
While these terrorist organizations are absolutely doing this to legitimize themselves and become legitimate, but the what they're doing isn't going to change. The biggest example to see how this is going to play out is in Syria. I think what's happening there. You know, very very known uh, former terrorist. With Al Qaeda and ISIS ties, who's now
It's fun
respected.
watching him play basketball with two people that targeted him personally for death.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? And so what's going on with Africa, when you brought up, the Islamic, I don't want to call it an invasion, but they're taking advantage of this situation because in some of these areas where Russia was supposed to be the support mechanism, Russia's not doing anything. And these terrorist
They're making
organizations know it.
promises
Yeah.
and they're not carrying out those promises. And that's going to be the tipping point once the people see that. And you're going to have I'm not talking Islam. I'm talking terrorist
Yes.
organizations that are affiliated with Islam, the Islamic State, other, Al Qaeda. They want to be a legitimate government, and they see, never let a good crisis go to waste. If you're in crisis, let us take over that. We will supply you with all of your needs, your basic needs, as long as you wear your headdress, as long as you, don't do what we tell you not to do, as long as we control you, you're going to be good to go. You're going to have all of your basic needs. And that
But
is,
we
for Gen Z, basic needs are very important.
right. We also have to address though. We could say extreme Islamists. You don't want to tie it to the actual religion of Islam. I get it,
Mhm.
but we can't ignore that fundamental principle on which that terrorist organization is built on is using that as a mechanism to control people. And also, we also ignore the Christian persecutions going on in Africa. The amount of deaths there that are never reported or even talked about. And while we can blame, for example, Russia not making promises and not supporting them, we also have to blame China, who's made considerable investments in Africa, promised the moon, especially in the Congolese, right? In the Congo.
Mhm.
And what are they doing outside of just raping the land and using cheap labor to get cobalt and whatever else? So I think it's too late for these people to realize they made a bad deal or sided with the wrong people. But question is, and this is important because Africa is rich in resources, and how does the US step in to support them and support the Gen Z effort in trying to turn things around?
Yeah, there's a few ways to do this. I would say one way is very shady, which is that you do your own information warfare your information operation campaign, right? You get the media in those. This is something China's been very effective at. So what China has done in many countries in Africa, especially, is take um, journalists, graduates of journalism school in those countries, all expenses paid trip to China to train them, to teach them how to push the Chinese narrative, and then send them back to those countries and look like legitimate sources within their country. That's one way the US could do it. It's very shady. And when that comes out in public, because we are a democracy, we're not a democracy. We are a constitutional republic, but we are free and we are open. And that information is going to come out. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen in China. But when that information comes out, once again, it's look at what the United States did trying to manipulate the
Right.
people. So the other part of that is something that I would say this administration is not doing a good job of, because they are claiming that they're America first. And I don't know how they're America first and going after Venezuela and these other things, but they claim they're America first. Well, we have partners within the continent of Africa, within all of these countries. The commander of U.S. AFRICOM meets on a month-to-month basis with a large majority of the partners in the African countries to tell them, right, to go into Nigeria and say, I know what the president said. I know what he tweeted out or what he truth socialed out, but here's what we're really trying to do. That's just the public thing. Here's what we're really trying to do. I think we cultivate those relationships on the African continent, and then we show tangible wins opposed from China, right? So China's going get the cobalt and they're raping the land there. How about we build infrastructure
Right.
and then ask,
Right.
hey, do you mind if we pay you to take this resource out of here? So showing those good good faith efforts to do stuff on the continent, as opposed to saying, you know we're going to bomb you to smithereens pretty soon. I think that is that's the right way to do it. I think what will happen with most of Western culture is going to be that first part where they're like, hey, let's just go manipulate the media like China does and see if we can get a win there. I don't agree with that path.
I think what you said is I think if we look at the landscape now and we're looking at what the younger generations are going through. And I know we're focusing on Africa, but this Gen Z uprising is really like everywhere. I mean, for the last at least since 2023, I think is about when you started seeing that. And then 24 is when things really started happening. And now it's just like full blown. Um, I think what you said is correct. If we're gonna be good stewards and we're going to be the people that say we back our allies, if we have relationships with African nations, by the way, we should step in and say, look, we want to support you. You want to work with us. We should help them build infrastructure, running water, help them with their power grid, like things like that we can do, that we have the resources and money to do. And I think that would gain more favor and trust than, like you said, oh, we're going to bomb you if you don't comply with this, or even the information warfare aspect. If you're in there on the ground doing these good deeds for the betterment of that society and that country, it's going to be harder and harder to get people to turn via the information warfare aspect of it, because they're like, well, you're saying this, but they're actually giving me clean water. They're giving me electricity. They're building roads. I think that would be the better approach. I'm not sure how feasible that is. It may not be the quickest way to go about it, but I think that would be the better way to create these inroads and build these relationships. Because Africa is important. I mean, there's no reason that continent has not come to a state of modernization that the rest of the world seems to have been. It's been, in my eyes, it looks like it's just been intentionally suppressed.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely agree.
So let's, how much more time we got? Yeah, wow, we've been going for a bit.
Yeah, I got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, no, I see that. I just looked down. I'm like, oh, all right. So real quick, let's wrap it up here. I'm going to ask you this. Do you see this bleeding into the United States based on how Gen Z feels in the U.S. at this particular moment?
I think I'll wait for the next presidential election to make that statement. I think we are on the cusp of it because of the last few presidents that we've elected, meaning that they're in their 80s. They come from the same year, the same schools. There is the Nepo baby commentary that is happening that is like, how am I, like, America is this beacon of, if you come here, you can make a name for yourself. It doesn't matter who your family is, who what your past was. You can make a name for yourself in this country. That, I will say, in my opinion, is no longer true. You have to either have your dad and your mom have paid something for you, or you have had to have been born 1948, gone to Harvard, gone to Yale, and that's the only way you can make headway. Or you have to just lie, bald-faced lies on a camera, and then promote it with Russian bots. So the only three ways to make headway in the United States. But I will wait to see if Gen Z makes a push in the elections, if it's and I'm also interested in how they push it. Is it going to be like New York, where you have a democratic socialist who's offering freedoms for or not freedoms, but offering free things for everyone? Yeah. Or are you going to have someone who's young, like and I'm an Andrew Yang fan, and he has said some, I want to give everybody $1,000, but he sees the future of AI and technology and how that's going to affect people. So is it going to be someone more along those lines?
Are you saying wait till the next presidential election? Because I think this is going to happen in the midterms. I think we're going to see it sooner.
Yep, I'm saying the midterms.
I agree. And it's interesting.
And also watch for what China's going to do with Taiwan, because 2026 is a key year that, and I have it right now as unlikely that China makes a move for Taiwan in 2026. That is different from this spring when I had it as possible.
I thought you said 27.
So, and yeah, this is my intelligence background. I've been teetering back and forth. 2027 is where my initial thoughts were. And then it was told to me by a trusted agent that I know that was like, well, if it's 2027, that means they need to make a move by 2026.
Gotcha. So I think we're definitely on the cusp of seeing this Gen Z revolution. I think Mamdani in New York was a clear sign that this is where it's headed, because he is an admitted democratic socialist. I have old clips that I've played where he is admitting that his entire intention is to infiltrate the government by spreading socialism. Literally saying that. He's literally said this. And socialism easily plays to the frustrations of those who feel that they've been wronged and don't have an even playing field in front of them to succeed. And we just saw that in New York. So hopefully the U.S. isn't pushed down that path, but I think we're going to see a lot of the Gen Z grievances played out in the midterms. I think they're going to come together. They're going to cast their votes, and they're definitely going to make a statement. And I have to say, I can't necessarily disagree with their frustrations. I mean, even for us and at our ages, we go through the same crap, and we're like, is this going to get better? Like, is it going to act like, is our government actually going to represent us? Like, what is going on? But anyway, you have anything final you want to say before we sign off here?
Yeah, I think I get off my soapbox that I've been in this entire episode. I apologize if I went a little too hard on some things, but I really believe, and I'm not, you know me, I'm not fear mongering. Like, I push back against the fear mongering of major media. I'm worried, George. I really am. Like, the last few months have got me very worried for the future, not of just the United States, but of the world. And the reason I'm worried is because it has nothing really to do with what China's going to do with Taiwan. It has everything to do with what everyone is doing in the information space.
I agree. I mean, shit, I almost feel like we're seeing the world coming to a reset, like what happened to the Mayan civilization, what happened to the Egyptians, in the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Did it all implode and collapse and then civilization reset? Are we heading that direction? Now I'm getting conspiratorial, but I'm just saying, that's a possibility, man. I hope it doesn't get there. I mean, I think worst case, I think you're spot on. I mean, a lot of people don't want to admit it, but I think we're already going through World War III. We're in the tested out phase. We're in
a warm World War III.
Yes, agreed with you, and that's scary.
Yes,
that is scary. We're so many generations removed from like legitimate tough guys who think that they can get out there and handle a world war. Like, this could test some people, and a lot of people are not.
I can't do it, George. I'm gonna be 42 soon. You're not going to see me out there.
I'm serious, but we need you, Cotton. We're gonna throw you back in. Hey, Hey, appreciate it, man. I appreciate you being here. And I know your situation with you being in Germany. We don't always get to connect, but whenever you have time, you're ready, just reach out. Let me know. Always glad to have you.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate it. I love our conversations.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much.
Devils hide behind redemption. Honesty is a one-way gate to hell.